Hello there, welcome back to the booth here at Pro Tour Ixalan. That's Simon Gertzen. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. You've been asking for him in the chat all day. We've got Luis Scott-Vargas in the feature match area. He is 2-0 coming in. His opponent, Simon Nielsen, also 2-0, and he's got a pretty cool deck that you don't see very often in Ixalan. We'll tell you all about it when we get down there. Sit down. It's time for round number 3 here from the Pro Tour. And welcome back to coverage here at Pro Tour Ixalan. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Simon Gertzen. And it is time for round 3 action where we have, that's right, the triumphant return of that guy. Luis Scott-Vargas took a year off from the Pro Tour to join us in the booth here. Simon did a great job, but we have unleashed him back onto the world. And his opponent on the other side of the table from Denmark, that is Simon Nielsen. Remember Simon from the Daneblast team at the World Magic Cup a few years back. He's playing for Team Child's Play. Luis is playing for Team Channel Fireball, of course. And we're underway. Now, as things pan out here, Simon shakes his head. Luis has a very solid white-black deck. He is splashing for a hostage taker. One of the best cards in the format, if not the best. But I'm actually more interested in Simon's list here because he's got a different take on the format. He's actually playing a color pair you don't see very often. It's green-black.
He is that black-green Explorer deck that is trying to abuse cards like Wildgrowth Walker. Simon Nielsen actually has 3 of them. He second pick one of them, and we see it right here.
There it is. Wildgrowth Walker, one of the big payoffs. If you can follow up a Wildgrowth Walker with, say, 2 Explorers, the Wildgrowth Walker gets out of hand very quickly. It's a lot of life gain, and all of a sudden the thing's a 3/5 that you've only invested 2 mana into.
But Simon is under a lot of pressure, so he has to stem the bleeding, and then he has to get that payoff from his Explore cards.
In the meantime, a good start for Luis Scott-Vargas, who has already played out a Queen's Bay Soldier and a Bishop of the Bloodstained. He's attacking with both of those. The token is staying back, as it's a pretty easy block on the Wildgrowth Walker. And we're going to see Skullduggery here from Simon Nielsen, though with 4 mana available for Luis, he may want to respond here. I know that he's got Vraska's Contempt in his deck, and I believe in his hand as well.
Yes, and Simon was very careful with that Skullduggery. He could have gone for more value, for example, trying to pick off the 1/1 lifelink token, but he just didn't want to expose his Walker.
Interesting. It really does kind of give a hint at how much he values that card, because that is really tempting, right? To just give your Walker +1/+1 until end of turn and then kill that token.
Especially after what I believe have been 2 mulligans by Simon. So
that's correct.
He wants to get as much value out of the few cards he has left.
Yeah, I would say that it would actually be better for Simon to go ahead and take a little bit of extra risk on to try to get that value back.
That's the default that you should usually take, and Simon decided that this Walker was just too important to take that risk.
Yeah, and that could be, you know, his strategic choice is to say, well, if my Wildgrowth Walker were to die, then I will not have a chance to win the game anyway, and I don't care about the token so much. So that's what he decided to do. And, you know, here it pays off for him. He gets 3 life back. He now has a 2/4 Wildgrowth Walker after the Sunrise Seeker comes down. And it also did hit. He gets a +1/+1 counter on that. And he kept a Grazing Whiptail on top of his library, on top of all that. So it's kind of worked out for Simon. He actually is looking to be quite stable here.
Exactly, and the price he paid is that 1/1 token on Luis's side, which might not even have a big impact on the game altogether.
This is an aggressive attack here from Luis Scott-Vargas, sending in the 3/2 into the den of 4 toughness creatures, but Simon takes it.
Yep, just because he's also aware of the fact, he was aware already of the fact that Luis might be holding combat tricks. Luis is not really playing much, so Nielsen has to put him on something.
Wow, and look at this. Simon is now kind of going off. He plays Direfleet Interloper, which is going to trigger the Wildgrowth Walker again. It's now a 3/5, and he even hit once again, so the Interloper's 3/3. Oh, the fun's going to stop there. Poor Simon Nielsen says, come on, man. I finally just got this engine running. But Luis is going to calmly use contract killing to take it down. And now he is going to attack with his 2 creatures that aren't that token. And you can see that with no blocks once again, Luis Scott-Vargas firmly representing a combat trick, and Simon's buying it the whole way.
Simon, when Simon cast that Skullduggery in a defensive manner, he said, I don't want to risk you having a combat trick. And that might make Luis more likely to bluff a combat trick, because he knows his opponent has already been aware of one. Of course, he might just be holding Skullduggery or something similar.
Wow, so what does Simon have in his hand? Let's take a look here, because he actually played the Diviner to hit the Whiptail land, hit it, but then didn't play it. Now, Luis does know, though, about the Vanquish the Weak. That was the card that was revealed to the Interloper. So Luis actually knows Simon's entire hand at this point.
If Simon had kept his 4/4 able to block, so if we discount the Pious Interdiction here, then having Vanquish the Weak would have prevented Luis from going for any combat tricks.
Right, and speaking of combat tricks, Simon actually knows about Vampire Zeal in hand for Luis. That's what he hit with his Explore creature. So Simon doing his best to work around it, doesn't want to give up any board presence to that Vampire Zeal if he can help it. I mean, at some point he may need to just bite the bullet, but we'll see. In the meantime, Simon's down to a precarious 4 life.
Oh. Takes back the decision to cast Mark of the Vampire, maybe?
There we go. And there's that Vraska's Contempt that Luis has been holding the entire game, and he administers maximum punishment with it here, as he has now assembled lethal damage on the battlefield. A really cool game 1 where both players had a lot of information about what the other players were working with and had to maneuver their board states accordingly.
Didn't look too rusty to me.
I have to agree with you on that one. That is game 1 going to Luis Scott-Vargas. We're going to get updates and more live magic for you right after these messages. We'll be right back.
Check out Ixalan Booster Draft Leagues on Magic Online. Draft anytime, play anytime. Available now. For more information, visit mtgo.com.
Grand Prix events offer great experiences for players of all skill levels. These Magic celebrations are headlined by 2-day open tournaments with pro players, feature top artist signings, and host a wide range of side events. Find an upcoming Grand Prix event near you at magic.wizards.com/Grand Prix.
Welcome back to the feature match area here at Pro Tour Ixalan. We're in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We can jump back to Bram Snapvangers versus Yam Wing Chun. This is, whoa, Yammy. He's got a heck of a board state here, facing down just a lone Brazen Buccaneers. This one looks a little one-sided, doesn't it?
A little bit one-sided, yeah. Bram is still deliberating if that swamp in his hand is going to help him.
And he's decided it won't, but maybe this Dire Fleet captain will. It does not look super likely.
Now, I think Bram is of the school of thought that you should never concede too early.
So he's of the correct school of thought then. Barring clock, of course.
These creatures are holding back a few attackers here.
This Fleet Ritter is filthy. I think you can see the things going down the back of the sleeves just from being here.
Actually, really interesting black-red deck by Bram. He had a Burning Sun's Avatar passed to him, second pick, and then a Charging Monster Sword, third pick.
Passed to him?
At the Pro Tour. That's something that I wouldn't have expected.
Wow, I'm shocked to hear that for sure. But this one looks like it's really slipped away from Bram here. He thought about sending it in the red zone, but Yam just kind of laughs and Bram scoops him up. So that's Yam Wing Chun picking up game number 1. I can tell you also that Paul Rietzel from Team Ultimate Guard is up a game over Joe Lossett from Team Card Hoarder. That's them on the right-hand side of your screen down there. Just kind of working our way through the first Brewster draft here. This is the third and final round of that draft. We will be transitioning into Standard for those of you looking forward to Constructed. You're not too far away. And we're back underway here on our main match, Luis Scott-Vargas versus Simon Nielsen. No 2-drop here for Luis, but a very good 2-drop for Simon. He's got a Drover of the Mighty, super powerful in a Dinosaurs deck, but really good on its own anyway, just as a 2-mana mana ramper. And you can see that he's taken advantage of it by casting a 4-drop here on turn 3, though that's a nice one for Luis Scott-Vargas. A Mauvrin Fane has hit the battlefield, though normally you want to have a 1 or 2-drop vampire that you can attack with to follow up.
Yeah, and it's much better if you're on the play and your opponent doesn't ramp out a 4-drop on turn 3. So that's one of the weaker Mauvrin Rains that we'll see.
Yeah, Mauvrin Fane does trigger himself if he gets to attack, but as you can see, things can get pretty dicey for just a 2/2 for 3 mana.
Yeah, you don't want to just downgrade your 2/2 into a 1/1 lifelink. That's not a good trade.
This is interesting. Simon Nielsen is going to play New Horizons and make a pretty scary Interloper. And he actually did hit, though this does open the door for Luis to get an attack in with Mauvrin Fane and get a relatively free 1/1 vampire.
No, completely free.
Yeah.
It is something that Simon has shown in game 1. He doesn't believe that 1/1 lifelink tokens are a huge deal in this matchup. He wants to make huge monsters. And with something like a menace creature, it's not profitable for Luis to block with them.
Let's look at what Luis is working with, because he just put a pretty powerful 4-drop, that Paladin of the Bloodstain, into the graveyard. Ah, I see. Luis is on the hunt for a swamp at this point, and a 4-drop wasn't really what he was looking for. He's got Vraska's Contempt and Contract Killing in his hand that he currently cannot cast. He's going to have to just go for the big double block here, though, against this Interloper and hope that Nielsen doesn't have something.
Yeah, this is where you're just praying and then relieved when there's nothing. Instant speed from your opponent.
Exactly, and there's Contract Killing as the follow-up play here for Nielsen to kill Mauvrin Fane, leaving Luis Scott-Vargas with no non-land permanents on board, and he's going to have to settle for a pretty unexciting Queen's Bay Soldier. Luis has certainly fallen behind here.
And Luis is getting a bit punished here. He has 3 planes and a swamp. He cannot deploy his cards fast enough. He is a deck which is splashing blue. We haven't seen that yet.
Oh, what in the world? Look at this. It's my boy, Ancient Brontodon, has appeared on the scene. Oh, no, Luis is going to immediately take care of it. That was a short-lived excitement.
Very anticlimactic.
I agree. It was super sweet. Gregory, the Ancient Brontodon, shows up for but a fleeting moment. You do not see a lot of those on the battlefield here in Ixalan, I'll tell you that.
Especially not in the 2-0 bracket.
Indeed. Well, Sunrise Seeker here for Simon Nielsen is going to reveal yet another Explore card. That's Seeker Squire. And he really did do it. I mean, I think this is really cool that Simon was able to put together the Explore deck. When we first saw it, we thought, you know, there's no gold cards in green and black, but maybe we can make these uncommons work. There's a lurking Chupacabra. Interestingly, he actually has one and has decided not to play it in the main deck.
Yeah, very, very surprising choice, but I'm sure he thought about it. He must have picked that up with the intention of playing it. Ultimately going for maybe just more Explore cards. I really like the life gain theme of the Walkers. It does allow him to play a different game than most decks in the format.
This is getting interesting now. Luis has found his second black mana source here with that second swamp. He decided just to cast Shining Aerosaur with it, but again, we know he has those 2 removal spells in hand. Another card he has Mark of the Vampire. And when you get a little behind, that can dig you out very, very quickly. By the way, look at that, a second Drover of the Mighty for Simon Nielsen. And remember, the Brontosaur, it's still there.
It is in play, yes.
Yeah, so those are actually 3/3s.
But now that Luis has drawn the second black source, he has access to removal for big creatures. He has Mark of the Vampire to turn races around. And I think his overall card quality is just better than what Simon has put together.
Definitely. I mean, Simon, you know, one of the reasons why I think that it's cool that he drafted this deck is because it's a hard deck to put together well. The incentives are not super strong for it. And now we're just kind of racing here. Luis has cast Shining Aerosaurs on back-to-back turns, and Simon just keeps on attacking with the Seeker there.
And Simon is on a single card, so Luis doesn't have to be too scared to just suit up one of his Aerosaurs.
Yes, and this is a huge sequence here because if Luis can even get one hit in, it could be really good. And if this Aerosaur goes unchecked, it's going to be game. Like, there's no way that Simon can race a Shining Aerosaur with Mark of the Vampire on it from this point. So Luis pulling firmly into the lead here. Simon only had a Forest in hand coming into this turn. We're going to see what he drew. We don't quite have it yet, but he needs something really impressive from this point. Starting off with contract killing or something. He's already used one this game.
Crushing Canopy would be amazing.
Which he's main decking, by the way. Okay, well, he did bring in the lurking Chupacabra because we see it here, but that is far from what he wants to see at this point. And there's Pirate's Cutlass, and Luis is attacking.
For lethal.
Exactly, for 10 damage, and that's going to do it. Luis Scott-Vargas, welcome back to the Pro Tour, my friend. 3-0 to start the draft. And you see a little laugh there from Nielsen as they sign their match slip. So, good start there for Luis. And we have 3 more matches going because he played really fast. So let's take a look at Eric Severson versus Hao Xuan Huang, and we'll see as we come in. Well, last I checked, they were in Game 1. Looks like maybe they've moved on to Game 2 here, but we'll get an update on that. Looks like Severson is going to take the damage here from the snapping sailback. He did have a double block if he wanted it, but decided against it. Yeah, it looks like Huang won the first game. So we are in the middle of Game 2 here. Interesting little interplay there as well. You saw Huang attack with his 4-4 into the 3-3 and the 3-2. Then post-combat, he played his tap creature there.
Yes, and that
has to signal something.
That gives Severson a very good information about the fact that Huang wanted him to block, wanted him to double.
There's a dive down.
That was probably the reason for it.
Yep, that would give his creature exactly 7 toughness. It would get it a +1/+1 counter thanks to Enrage, and that's why Huang did not play the Water Trap Weaver pre-combat.
Yeah, combat tricks and Enrage working really well together. It's actually kind of unfortunate for Eric. He had a removal spell, which is actually quite good when your opponent is holding combat tricks, but that dive down was combat trick and permission spell for contract killing.
Yeah, Dive Down is one of the cards that has risen the highest from where it started out. It looked like, oh, you see these type of cards occasionally, and they're usually fringe playable or maybe a sideboard card. But Dive Down is a card that you see game in and game out, and you constantly have to be thinking about. And you know, honestly, that sequence was exactly why it showed both sides of it. But you know, when people are going to pay 5 mana sorcery speed and you can just trade it for 1 mana, you're pretty happy with that.
And that's why it's so important to not only look at the cards in a vacuum, but also how games play out, to realize that this is something that's super valuable because combat is so important, combat tricks are so good, and removal is so clunky. So all these reasons together, curve being a huge factor, means that Dive Down is just a very, very playable card.
Right.
Of course, it's never going to win you the game on its own, but if it protects your best card, that's definitely worth it.
Huang just wants to make sure that Eric only has 1 card, which he does.
I'm a bit surprised to see an attack here. I thought Huang was forced to maybe consider staying back on defense.
He has fallen a bit behind here on board, though it looks like he's got a pretty... He's going to use his treasure right away because he just used Depths of Desire, and this makes a lot more sense. So he returned a creature from Eric, but that's not normally something you would do on the main phase against black-white. They don't really have any way to interact with depth, so you would just wait. But as you can see, he had an air elemental he wanted to cast that turn as well.
Yeah, I really like this play. It shows you how far he's thinking ahead. He knows that he basically lost a card for bouncing the Deacon. But if Eric spends his turn replaying the Deacon, he can already calculate, I will take 4, but I'm threatening lethal, so that's the first chump blocks I'm getting. And he is basically putting the pressure on Eric, not the other way around. And that's always important in this limited format.
Yeah. Huang does not want to sit there and let Severson start to attack him with these 1/1 vampires, especially if one of them's getting the benefit from that anointed Deacon. That can swing a race back.
And I love this attack as well because it's kind of saying, I know you want me to replay the Deacon, so I'll do something else. It's that doesn't even mean it's the best play. It's just, if I do what you expected me to do, I'm probably not winning.
That's great stuff from both of these players.
And it's a great bluff as well, because if you block and Eric punishes you, you're suddenly so far away from presenting lethal.
Yeah, I think Huang's really trying to consider, well, what's the worst case scenario here if I block? You know, the old what could go wrong. And, you know, there's not that many tricks here that are just straight 1-for-1 in these colors, right? I mean,
no, I think the card
here.
I think the card that's on your mind is Fathom Fleet Cutthroat as a raid, not really raid, but if you attacked and your opponent got a profitable block, you're basically getting a creature and the removal.
Right, you're going to trade off one of your vampires. Let's see if he has it. Oh, he does have it. And that's a huge downswing there for Huang as he loses his air elemental, and all it cost Eric was just a 1/1 vampire.
Yeah, and Huang was of course aware of that card. This is one of the many cards that you have to be aware of. It's kind of like a combat trick, except that it's tucked onto a creature, post-combat trick. And Huang just said, okay, if you have that, blocking is still my best option, and he did.
His attack doesn't look great here. There is a pretty viable double block, though it is risky for Severson.
And Huang has just been attacking every single time.
Yes.
You see he's considering staying back, and then every single time it's just, no, if I don't keep attacking, I know the Deacon is coming down. I know I'm not winning the race.
He's going to go for the double block here, Simon.
And I think Huang has to have something, right? This double block is not what he wants to have happen.
No, I mean, if he's just stone bluffing and willing to trade off his 4/4 for a 3/3 here, that does not leave him in a great position.
A 4/4 that was on defense dominating these creatures.
Exactly. So let's see what Huang has here. Maybe another Depths of Desire. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So a good situation there for Huang. Remember, there's also an enraged trigger. Now he gets to upgrade to a 5/5, and he's only facing down the 1/1. Now we will note, probably going to be the Deacon this turn, and that is once again a pretty big life swing back in Eric's favor as he can target the Vampire. Though, you know what? I'm pretty sure that the last card in hand for Huang is a Pounce. Yes, that's exactly what it is.
And he has played this game beautifully. He has played these bounce spells to really good effect, and he's one step ahead in how things are going to shape up.
He really is. Remember, that's another enraged trigger here, and all Eric can do is attack for one measly point of lifelink, but he's now facing down a huge 6/6 threat.
Which is a 2-turn clock, even if the Vampire connects again. So
Right.
I don't know if I don't want to say Huang calculated all of this, but I think he has done a really good job to maximize his chances.
Yeah. Now, if Eric is forced to chump block here, it's really fallen away from him.
And this is the awkward part, because chump blocking enraged creatures is not the best way of winning games.
So is that a Deathless Ancient now? Oh, another copy of Pounce for Huang. That gives him the game, does it not?
It does.
There it is. Huang Haoshan wins the match. Actually, that's 2-0 over Eric Severson. Well played. That was a really fun one to watch. And the cards really lined up nicely at the end there.
That dive down ended up being pretty important.
Yeah. Was that the match or we got game 3?
Yeah, that was okay.
And you heard Eric Stevenson say it. I happen to agree with him on that one. Wow, that dive down ended up being pretty important. And he was not kidding about that, as they got to protect.
Yeah, that was
Haoshan's
the
best
turning
threat.
point.
Yeah,
the first time where we could see, okay, the blue-green deck does have tools to win this game.
That's right. And, you know, one of the things about Pounce, of course, is that you do need something of relative size on the battlefield. Now, he happened to have one of the best possible options, because every time he pounced and killed one of his opponent's creatures, it was also growing. That snapping sailback is really one of the better targets for Pounce.
Yeah, one of the best. And of course, Pounce is not a way to get back into games you're losing, but if you're ahead, then that's really, really powerful. Also, I want to mention the dive down again. The problem with Pounce is you're exposing yourself to removal, but even to combat tricks sometimes. So if you have that dive down, you can just always be sure that your pounces will connect the way you want them to.
That's right.
And this makes the difference in the end. You're not unhappy to have a Pounce in your deck. In your green decks, you will find some creature to fight with. But if you have 3 Pounces in an average green deck, it's probably too many.
Yep, I
because
agree.
your creatures are not that much bigger than those of other colors. If you have Snapping Sailback, if you have combo tricks of your own, if you have just a good curve of high toughness creatures, you can play 2-3 Pounce and they will be great.
Yeah. Pretty cool stuff, too, from some of the decks that we saw. You know, I wouldn't have been shocked to see a little more kind of close to the vest decks, you know, the Vampires decks, the Merfolk decks, the ones that we've seen draft in and draft out. But here, we actually got a pretty big view. We got a 4 or 5 color deck. We got to see the black-green deck go, and then, you know, some of the more usual suspects. So great stuff from the limited portion here at Pro Tour Ixalan. This, of course, means we're going to be transitioning ever slowly over to standard. So for those of you Constructed fans, it is that time. We've got a short commercial break, and then we'll be back with more. We'll see you in a little bit.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the news desk. It's lunchtime here at Pro Tour 1 of the 2017-18 season, and we have got a stacked menu for you here for lunchtime. Brian David Marshall, the Pro Tour historian, me, your host Rich Hagan, Maria Bartholdi, of course, and Paul Chion welcoming you along. So much to bring you over this lunchtime period. We're going to take a look at the morning. We're going to go round the table, not just this table, because there's only 4 of us, but a full 8-way round, the featured draft pod, and learn what lessons. Where did all the cards fall? Was there a really good green-blue Merfolk deck out there? Did someone get there? Yes, I know you think that. Where did all the players end up with that? We'll then mark your card for the team series because there are 37 teams. Can't promise to get through all 37, but maybe about a dozen or so, BDM?
Absolutely.
All right, so we'll do that for you. And then Maria, replacing me will be Simon Gertzen. That's a strict upgrade in case you're paying attention at home, to talk through the standard preview, because that's where we're heading next. So much to bring you over the next 30 to 40 minutes or so before the players unleash 75 cards into this Ixalan standard format. But we are going to begin by going round the table.